Clearly, when it comes to Caitlin Clark, there's some resentment, as I've articulated before. What people are missing, Monica, is I have no problem with it whatsoever.
Stephen A. Smith just blindsided everyone with a take no one saw coming. In a jaw-dropping rant on First Take, he argued that Clark instigates resentment among her peers, pointing to the infamous pokes and also to Clark's college-era taunt that sparked the Angel Reese feud. And while the fallout from that fever-sun scuffle is still smoking hot, the timing couldn't be worse. Just as the league faces mounting pressure to protect its breakout star, Smith flips the script and asks, is Caitlin Clark the problem? Is this brutal honesty or just another media grenade? What do you think? Did Stephen A. cross a line, or did he finally say what others were too afraid to? Sound off below. But the real twist came during a heated segment on ESPN where Smith and Monica McNutt broke down the Fever vs. Sun showdown that's had the entire WNBA community buzzing.
The Connecticut Sun are struggling badly this year, and so there is probably a lack of patience with them and maybe not making all the smartest plays over the course of the game. But I don't know that I would have even had this conversation this morning, Molly. In fact, I saw this happen and flipped over to the much better game, which happened to be the Liberty and the Dream.
As Monica acknowledged the rising tension and the outright physicality directed at Clark, Stephen A. steered the conversation in a direction few expected.
Finish?
Go ahead.
I just
What
want
you
to
got?
be finished, Monica. Okay. First of all, I want you to listen to my point, Monica, because this is funny to me. Okay? Yes, there's resentment because, first of all, you're absolutely right. This is much ado about nothing.
With a pointed tone, he claimed that Caitlin's issue had to do with nothing, implying that the repeated rough play she's facing might not be entirely unprovoked.
In the heat of competition, tempers flare. You know, last time I checked, women got tempers just like men do. Ain't no problem. Ain't no problem at all. Ain't no big deal at all.
His reasoning was her college-era trash talk, her massive popularity, and her tendency to show up opponents, even referencing the infamous "you can't see me" taunt that went viral during March Madness.
Caitlin Clark being that golden goose per se, that rising tide that's lifting all boats. I stand by my past proclamations that there's resentment towards her because of that. But I want to take it a step further. There's also resentment towards her because she instigates resentment towards her sometimes. Oh, Caitlin can clap at you now.
Yes.
Caitlin can antagonize you now. Remember in college, doggy, Eminem, the whole Angel Reese thing with her started because when Caitlin was giving it to everybody else, she was the one waving in their face.
But if you actually watched the game, the narrative plays out very differently. From the opening minutes Clark was being singled out, there were constant pokes, off-ball shoves, and deliberate attempts to rattle her rhythm.
Away. I mean, is that displacement?
One of the most talked about moments came when Connecticut's J.C. Sheldon blatantly poked Clark in the eye, an action that had fans and analysts calling for a flagrant foul. And then, as if that wasn't enough, Marina Mabry's hard shove sent Clark crashing to the floor. These weren't just heat-of-the-moment fouls. They felt like targeted intimidation.
Oh, and Marina Mabry's going to get ejected.
Despite the repeated hits, Clark stayed on her feet. She didn't retaliate, didn't argue, and didn't complain. She kept her composure and played through it, finishing the game with solid numbers despite the chaos around her.
And perhaps even in the category of suspension worthy.
There was no evidence of her inciting anything in that matchup. If anything, it seemed like her very presence on the court was enough to ignite frustration from her opponents. That's what makes Smith's comments so jarring. He wasn't reacting to a Clark meltdown or some viral trash talk moment. He was referencing a months-old college clip, trying to justify the bullying she's now enduring in the pros. And that clip? Clark wasn't even directing the taunt at another player. It was aimed at her own bench. This kind of revisionist framing isn't just misleading, it's reckless. On a WNBA podcast shortly after the ESPN segment aired, one analyst summed it up with brutal honesty.
But the butt part is the problem, because then he says it's because she waves a little bit. We got video of that. So that's her move. She does that. Apparently, she does that move, and that move right there is the move that leads her to getting crushed on inbound passes, elbowed to the head, and generally just having her ass kicked all the entire time.
That sentiment echoed across social media, where fans and former athletes alike began calling out the double standard. Plenty of stars before her celebrated big shots and played with flair. But why is Clark the one catching this level of heat? The uncomfortable truth may be that Clark's fame has made her a target not just on the court but in the media. She's bringing in historic viewership, she's leading jersey sales, and every arena she steps into is suddenly packed. And for some, that kind of spotlight shines too bright. There's jealousy, there's discomfort, and there's a growing effort to humble her publicly, even if it means rewriting the facts.
The WNBA, a league which has existed for about 25 years, maybe a little bit more than that, I think about 30 years now if I'm not mistaken, which has never turned a profit, which nobody was paying any attention to until the last year or so when they brought in Caitlin Clark, and they basically have been kicking the crap out of this girl.
So, when Stephen A. says Clark brings it on herself, it feels less like honest commentary and more like blaming the victim. He may believe he's holding her accountable, but many believe he's ignoring the context and the obvious. Getting poked in the eye, shoved to the ground, and hammered night after night isn't resentment, it's harassment. And excusing that by pointing to a college clip feels, frankly, lazy. Instead of asking why players keep targeting her, Stephen A. asked why she keeps getting targeted. There's a difference, and it's not subtle.
She got her comeuppance, and she was big enough to embrace it and accept it and say, yo, I deserve it. It was my turn because they got me good. South Carolina didn't do it to them when they spanked Iowa in the championship game. But nevertheless, she comes to the WNBA, and you see a little shove here and there. You see her throwing a little elbow here and there. You see her talking smack. Caitlin Clark does this.
The backlash to Stephen A. Smith's take on Caitlin Clark came fast, loud, and relentlessly. But it didn't happen in a vacuum. His now infamous comment that Clark instigates resentment set off a digital firestorm, drawing sharp criticism not only from fans but also high-profile figures including Barstool Sports founder Dave Portnoy. What was supposed to be a segment on First Take, analyzing the physical fever-verse-sun matchup, quickly morphed into a national debate on double standards, race, and the limits of sports commentary. Portnoy didn't hold back. In a blunt post on X, he slammed the WNBA and came to Clark's defense. He took a direct jab at Smith, referencing the viral solitaire clip, "Less solitaire, more facts." For Portnoy and many others, Smith's assessment wasn't just misguided, it was dangerous. It downplayed what appeared to be increasingly personal, targeted fouls against a rookie carrying the league's momentum on her back. What especially infuriated fans was the apparent double standard. When Angel Reese flashed her ring finger at Clark during the NCAA Finals, Smith praised the moment. "That's the kind of competition I love," he said at the time.
Reese was in her face chirping at her the way that she did. It would have never gotten to this point. But I have never deemed that to be a bad thing. I love that kind of confrontation. I love that kind of heat.
But now, when Clark takes repeated physical hits and reacts with the same fire and flair she's always shown, Smith claims she's the problem. Critics across the spectrum accused Smith of twisting the narrative and weaponizing context. He pointed to a months-old college clip where Clark made the "you can't see me" gesture, but failed to mention that it was aimed at her own bench, not an opposing player. That clip, long cleared up and mostly forgotten, suddenly became Smith's core evidence that Clark brings hostility on herself. The revisionism didn't sit well.
But she's also somebody, Doggy, you will appreciate this. Some of it is self-induced. I just happen to love it because that's sports.
Yet, amidst the overwhelming backlash, it's important to note that Smith is not entirely alone. A handful of commentators have echoed similar sentiments, arguing that the physicality Clark is facing is nothing new in the WNBA. To them, it's just part of the game. Rookies are often tested, stars are targeted, and Clark, as the most hype athlete the league has ever seen, was always going to face resistance.
Which is, again, something basketball players do and should do. That's part of the game, is to sell fouls and to get your opponent to have a technical or whatever so that they're in trouble for the rest of the game. Like, this is all part of basketball. So yeah, I really don't want this to like go to that extreme level where now people are saying just crazy things, because this has been around in the WNBA for a long time. It's a really aggressive sport. It's a competitive sport. It's a contact sport. And yes, do things get out of hand? Of course they do sometimes.
That perspective, while not dismissive, highlights a divide. Is Clark being singled out unfairly, or is she simply experiencing what every great player eventually does? Even so, the level of aggression and the lack of protection have raised eyebrows. Clark has already taken a poke to the eye, several body checks, and a hard shove to the floor without a single ejection issued against her opponents. Combine that with silence from league officials and what many see as lopsided officiating, and it becomes harder to defend the idea that this is just standard rookie treatment.
If Marina Mabrey's foul during the game was called a flagrant 2, like it was upgraded to, then she would have been ejected during the game, and I don't think any of this stuff with Sophie and JC would have happened at the end of the game if the refs would have gotten control of the game much earlier on. And I do think if they would have ejected Marina Mabrey during that whole play when she completely blindsided Caitlin, it wasn't a basketball play, it was after the whistle.
This is where Smith's comments become more problematic. Instead of using his platform to call out the league's failure to safeguard its biggest star, he deflects attention toward Clark's attitude. Fans want accountability for the uncaught aggression, not lectures about how a player should tone herself down to avoid it. Adding to the fire, Smith's comments sparked racial tensions as well. Some accused him of playing into racial stereotypes and ignoring the nuance of the conversation. When Angel Reese taunts its swagger, when Clark celebrates its disrespect, that double standard, critics argue, hurts not just Clark but the league as a whole. Because when rising stars are shamed for doing exactly what made them great, the message becomes clear: stay in your lane or get shoved out of it, literally. Others pointed out the business implications of the backlash. As one podcast host said, "The WNBA needs to make money while it can. Caitlin moves ratings, she moves merch, she puts butts in seats. You don't protect her now, she gets injured, tears an ACL, and the hype disappears. Then what?"
Women tear their ACL, I hate to say it, women tear their ACLs infinitely more often than men do. If Caitlin Clark, she just had an injury where she was out for a little bit. If she got injured, tore her ACL, she's out for a year. I don't know that interest level is going to stay the same. You got to make the money while you can.
That sobering take underscored the real stakes here. This isn't just about hot takes and social media clips. It's about the future of a league finally getting the attention it's always wanted. Stephen A. Smith may have thought he was making a bold contrarian point. Instead, he triggered a reckoning. The criticism wasn't just about what he said. It was about what he ignored, what he twisted, and who he chose to blame. In trying to shift the spotlight, he only made it burn brighter. What do you think about it? Let us know in the comments. And like and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching.